Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, April 14th. A cold front is sliding towards the east coast right now, and it could spark some strong to potentially severe thunderstorms later on this afternoon into the early evening hours along the I-95 corridor and all the way to the east coast again by later on this afternoon into the early evening hours. That frontal passage will usher in somewhat cooler air for Friday as we end the work week, and then a stronger cold front arrives in the eastern U.S. on Saturday night. Behind that front, an even colder air mass will arrive into the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. by Sunday morning. In fact, we'll probably go from high temperatures this afternoon in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City in the lower 80s to the 30s by Sunday morning, and that will set the stage for what looks like will be quite a cool week, cooler than normal for sure, across much of the nation, beginning the northern half of the nation, beginning on Sunday and lasting throughout next week, as there will be additional cold air outbreaks coming from Canada into the northern part of the nation. Before we get to the current weather situation, let's take a look at the latest sea surface temperature anomaly pattern around the globe. I am starting to look into the tropical outlook, and certainly one of the big factors will be what's going on with respect to sea surface temperatures in both the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Hope to come out with the tropical outlook over the next few weeks or so. Certainly, La Nina, the colder than normal conditions, looks like it'll continue to be a factor for yet another tropical season. This pattern out here over the tropical part of the Pacific Ocean with these blue areas here, the colder than normal sea surface temperatures, began in 2020, and it impacted the 2020 tropical season, and it impacted the 2021 tropical season, both the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. In general, it's a favorable factor for tropical activity in the Atlantic, an unfavorable factor, a limiting factor for tropical activity in the Pacific Ocean. And it looks like La Nina conditions will continue at least into the beginning and perhaps the middle part of the upcoming tropical season 2022. It's certainly not all that common to get back-to-back La Nina tropical seasons. It's even less common to get back-to-back-to-back La Nina type tropical season, but indeed it looks like that's what will happen. This colder than normal colder than normal or sea surface temperature pattern looks like it'll continue, as I say, into at least the early to middle part of the summer. It could end up getting to near neutral by the latter part of the summer, going into the fall. And of course, tropical season lasts all the way through September and October, so that's something we will monitor. A couple other areas of interest. Colder than normal waters here off the west coast of Africa. This can be an important limiting factor for tropical activity because many times waves come off the landmass of Africa, move from the east to the west, riding along in those tropical trade winds, and colder than normal water here could have a limiting, inhibiting effect on tropical activity. At the same time, there's a blob of warmer than normal water in the western Atlantic, so kind of mixed signals coming from the Atlantic Ocean with respect to surface water temperatures and tropical season coming up, but a clear signal for La Nina right now in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. Well, we have a cold frontal system sliding from the Ohio Valley into the eastern part of the nation, and it's not hard to find it right here on the latest radar sequence of maps here. Right here, this is skinny little line all the way down through central West Virginia, represents the position of the surface front. That'll be one band to monitor over the next few hours. Again, looks like it'll arrive in the I-95 corridor region mid to late afternoon, maybe into the early evening hours. Could be some strong to potentially severe thunderstorms associated with the arrival of this frontal system, potentially causing small hail and damaging wind gusts. Also some radar echoes kind of exploding just on the backside of that surface frontal system. So this is the area that we will monitor over the next several hours. And again, ahead of the front, temperatures jumping back into the 80s again today, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and that follows the 80 to 83 degree highs experienced in many of those I-95 corridor regions on Wednesday afternoon. Well, the overall weather pattern remains quite active, and we've talked about this at length over the last several videos, that as long as we keep getting cold air outbreaks from Canada into the U.S., that will continue the threat of severe weather, as we experienced yesterday. Fortunately, yesterday, by the way, was not a widespread tornado outbreak. There were numerous severe thunderstorms across the Mississippi Valley and the Tennessee Valley, even down into the deep south, with plenty of damaging wind reports, but not a widespread tornado outbreak, and that's a fortunate thing, a good thing. Today, the front a little bit weaker, but nonetheless, it can cause some strong to severe thunderstorms later on today, all along the eastern seaboard, the I-95 corridor region, again from generally from mid-afternoon all the way into the early evening hours. And here is the frontal system as depicted here on these maps here of 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Very warm ahead of the front. Again, the 80s likely today in many parts of the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. And look at these temperatures. This is some 20 to 25 degrees below normal. Of course, they had a raging snowstorm in the Dakotas, now into the southern part of Canada. Still, in fact, snowing in parts of North Dakota this morning with temperatures some 20 to 25 degrees below normal. The snow earlier this week fell all the way to the coastal section of the Pacific Northwest. And it's not all that unusual to see some snow in April across those higher elevation locations in the western U.S., but even this was very uncommon. We had an inch of snow recorded at Portland, Oregon earlier this week, and that's the latest ever recorded for an inch of snow there. And certainly getting 20 to 25 inches is not a common thing in North Dakota, even in the middle part of April. Now let's move forward, and we'll see that cold air outbreaks will not end with this one coming for the latter part of the weekend into the northeastern part of the nation. First of all, today's frontal system ushers in somewhat cooler air on Friday to end the work week in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Certainly noticeably cooler than today. We'll have temperatures in the 80s this afternoon, highs confined to the 60s on Friday. But notice, a few degrees below normal, but not quite as cold relative to normal as what is up to the north and west. Still very, very cold, some 20 to 25 degrees below normal for the middle part of April as we begin the day on Friday. And that air mass slides to the south and east. Strong cold frontal system comes through the eastern states on Saturday night, maybe with additional showers and thunderstorms. And by the time we get to Sunday morning, and here we go, this is a Sunday morning forecast map, you basically have far below normal temperatures across much of the northern part of the nation. Down in the deep south, the southern part of the nation, you have a lot of warmer than normal conditions. But by Sunday morning, in the mid-Atlantic region, the 30s will be common. So 30s on Sunday morning, following the 80s of this afternoon, and of course the 80s on a Wednesday afternoon as well. This is not the end of the cold air outbreaks. Let's kind of quickly move forward here. It stays colder than normal into the early part of next week. And here's another cold air outbreak reaching the northeastern part of the nation by the middle part of next week. That's not the end of the cold air outbreaks. Here we go. Now we're a week ahead of right now. Next Thursday, April 21st, and yet another cold air outbreak diving into the south and east, reaching the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S., by the end of next week. So a continuation of those cold air outbreaks. And as we have been mentioning, as long as we get those cold air outbreaks, the threat of severe weather will continue, and it looks like that will be the case over the next couple of weeks. Well, speaking of the cold for Sunday morning, again, the 80s this afternoon, much of the Mid-Atlantic region. And take a look at these temperatures as depicted by the 0Z run of the GFS for Sunday morning. Basically the 30s, even in the I-95 corridor region. Sunday morning, sunrise Sunday, from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City, and even below freezing in interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., upstate New York, upstate Pennsylvania, much of West Virginia, below freezing by the time we get to Sunday morning. And that follows this very warm weather that we're experiencing right now, but a couple of cold fronts will pass through over the next 48 hours or so. One later this afternoon into tonight, and the stronger one in terms of its impact on temperatures comes through the eastern U.S. on Saturday night, and by the time we get to Sunday morning, a cold start to the second half of the upcoming weekend. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the operational run of the GFS 0Z last night. First of all, the green here represents some shower activity, rain shower activity associated with the cool frontal system. But look at this dark blue here, just north of the western Great Lakes into the south central part of Canada. That is significant snow, significant accumulating snow still falling. And look at this isobar pattern here, a tight pressure gradient around that strong low pressure system. Even in North Dakota this morning, there's still some snow falling with some very strong winds. And again, we saw temperatures some 20 to 25 degrees below normal for this time of the year. By the time we get to the afternoon and evening, there'll be a chance of strong to potentially severe thunderstorms in the eastern U.S., especially across the I-95 corridor region all the way to the East Coast later this afternoon into the early evening. That frontal passage ushers in cooler air for Friday. Not cold, but cooler. Still highs in the 60s on Friday in places like D.C., Philly, New York City, but that'll feel a little bit cooler compared to the 80s of this afternoon. Then another strong cold front arrives late in the day on Saturday into the eastern U.S. with some showers, maybe even a strong thunderstorm or two. That passes on through by the time we get to Sunday morning. And one of the ways you can tell how cold this air mass is, we referred occasionally to these dashed blue lines. These are what we call thickness lines. This 540 thickness line right here, all the way down to the D.C. metro region comes Sunday morning. That is indicative of some pretty cold air for any time of the year, but especially for the middle part of April. We'll have a stiff wind out of the north to northwest. So again, a cold start to the day on Sunday, and high temperatures confined to the 50s, even in the urban areas along the I-95 corridor region on Sunday afternoon. That's quite a difference from the 80s that we are experiencing today and as we did yesterday. Then we move forward, and by Monday morning, this is an interesting thing we'll have to monitor over the next few days. The GFS from last night's 0Z run does not have much of a system down here in the southeastern U.S. I think it may be underdoing the potential here. There may be a stronger system by the time we get to Monday morning that we'll have to monitor over the next few days because come Monday morning, we're still going to have plenty of cold air up across the northeastern part of the nation. It's not out of the question that if indeed we get a stronger low pressure area down across the southeastern states, got to watch out for the possibility of some snow across interior sections of the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. Early next week, maybe in the Monday time frame. So this is something to watch. Again, this particular run of the GFS does not have much of a system at all here showing up, but I think it may be underdoing it. This is something we'll have to watch over the next couple of days. Again, there'll be plenty of cold air around, especially in the interior, higher elevation sections of the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. come Monday. Then we move forward here, and a couple more frontal passages usher in a couple more cold air outbreaks. Here we are now all the way out to next Thursday morning, a week from this morning, and we have yet another cold frontal system right in this region right here, and another cold air outbreak sliding across from the northern plains to the Great Lakes into the northeastern part of the nation towards the end of next week. So a lot going on in the world of weather. Watch out for potential severe thunderstorms later today across the eastern part of the nation. And a cold air mass arrives into the northeastern quadrant for the second half of the upcoming week. And that's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.